Yo, Sleepy Sheepy here. Today we're going to be looking at the new and improved Milady. So if you haven't seen, patch 113 just dropped and we now have access to much higher poise damage for most of the attacks on the Milady. We'll take a second to look at the actual poise damage data, but the short of this means that you're much more likely to stagger opponents when you land two-handed attacks with the Milady. For this build, we'll be running the Lightning Milady. You can run this on Dex, you can run this on Strength. It doesn't super matter, but I really enjoy the high damage output you get with the Lightning. We also buff this with the two-handed Sword Talisman, the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, Millicent's Prosthesis, and we're running 88 Poise, which is kind of the old Poise meta value. It'll take a little while before we have a good decision about where Poise should be at, but with that said, we'll take a look at how this performs in both Duels and Invasions, and take a quick peek at the frame data for this as well. Alright, so if you haven't seen this tool before, this is going to be Amelia's frame data tool, and this is really helpful for just seeing a ton of different information. So if we pull up Light Greatsword here, we've got a number of different attack types. So this is going to be the one-handed R1, and if we hover over the attack, we can see that the poise damage is 121. So that's quite high for a one-handed R1, but things get really interesting when we look at the two-handed moveset. So two-handed R1, the poise damage is 157.3. So instant poise break regardless of the armor your opponent's wearing. And then we also have the two-handed running R2, and we can look at all the different attacks. We see the poise damage here is 133.1, so more than you need for a guaranteed poise break. And then we can also see that that's going to be on most of the subsequent hits. So that's really nice. You're always poise breaking. And then same for the running R2 heavy attack. We also get over 133 poise damage. So this is pretty huge. If you're interested in this, I'll link this below. You can really just look at all the different types of attacks for this weapon or any other attacks. This is a great resource if you're curious about frame data and just how poise changes impact things. You'll have a ton of information here. Also just like the frame at which it comes out at. That's super good to know. So that's a great tool, but let's go ahead and jump back into the showcase. Alright, so before we get into the actual showcase, if you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, I really would appreciate it. About 90% of people are not subscribed to this channel who do watch this channel, so if you like this content, you think it would be something you'd return to, that would help me out quite a bit. Alright, so now on to the good stuff. We're going to start things out with the 3v1. However, we will be seeing just a number of new things in the patch. So while this isn't a detailed tutorial about just all the changes in patch 1.3, I think there's a lot of good resources for that already out there. This will be some nice gameplay that demonstrates it. So we will be seeing Swift Slash later on, which did get pretty big change to it. A lot of the poise damage changes that come with lighter class weapons are going to be pertinent, and it'll just be a good demonstration of kind of where the game is at right now. So this first 3v1, we're going to be dealing with some latency from these players. We're also seeing Smith's Script Shield coming out, which has kind of insane tracking and pretty ridiculous range. So that would be something maybe for patch 114 that I'd like to see some changes to. There's nothing that really stops you from just hanging out in the back and tossing that shield. But here we can see just the ridiculous ability to bully players with the Light Greatsword. If the latency was a little bit better, I think we would have had a better chance of keeping priority pretty continuously, but if you're using the two-handed moveset and alternating between a heavy, light, and Ash of War attack, you're going to be doing substantial damage. So we do change over to this player with the Divine Beast head on, and we're able to chase them down pretty effectively with Sword Dance. I really would recommend Sword Dance as an Ash of War on this. The way you're able to maintain priority and also keep up with players is really helpful. And also, I find that going for like a jumping heavy attack followed up by a light attack followed up by Sword Dance, usually you need that hyper armor in that moment after your light attack, so it can be really nice to just kind of continue your aggression and ignore other players in the world due to the hyper armor of Sword Dance. Now we were able to get a nice guard break and riposte off of one of the other very latent players, and now we're just dealing with this player with the Ultra Great Sword. So we're gonna need to kind of get in, get out. That's the play style against Colossal Swords, since the hyper armor is quite intense and they're just gonna be able to out-trade us in most scenarios. So we do see just kind of the continued pressure using Sword Dance pretty liberally, and here as they go for Lion's Claw, we're able to roll in and grab a backstab. So yeah, definitely a helpful thing to do there, and we can move on to the next 3v1. And This one was like, I think an 11-minute invasion, so this one was absolutely crazy and also has just kind of a very silly ending that I hope you'll enjoy. So we start things out with just so much projectile spam. We see the Ash of War coming out from one phantom and then just spells coming out from the host and the other phantom. We also have to deal with the falling ceiling that has spikes on it. Like, it's hard to find a good spot to exist in the world here, and we are going to need to back off, play a little bit more passively, swap over to the Great Bow, and just see if we can get some Great Bow shots off. Fortunately, we see that one of the phantoms here does not have a lot of HP, so while that is encouraging, the fact that there's so many projectiles coming our way, notably sleep arrows in this moment currently, it's just really hard to get an opportunity to get the damage we need off on the player with low HP. So we're just going to hang out back here and hope that maybe they'll just start aggressing. That's why the Great Bow is so nice, is it can just kind of antagonize players to be a little bit more aggressive than maybe they should be, and here we see that working out quite well as this phantom does actually come and start aggressing us, and he doesn't actually have the backup that is required to kind of avoid taking either some trades or just encountering damage from the Light Greatsword. So there we see a substantial amount of damage come in, and we're able to finish off that phantom. Now here we can see kind of the issues we're having with these two players. It's really hard to approach when you have Star Shower and gravity missiles just popping in all the time. There, I think the animation desynced where they actually shot the gravitational missile into the wall, but instead it just kind of showed up somewhere else. And now a blue is in the world using Golden Crux, so it's a lot. Like, it's a lot to be dealing with, and especially Golden Crux, you know, if I don't have my health topped off, they can really do a number on me with that Ash of War. So we try to leave again due to the incoming frenzy incantations. Just more things to deal with, more challenges, but this is what we signed up for. So we go ahead and throw a sleep pot at the ground, and here you'll see probably the only time the host does anything meaningful in terms of engagement with us. They come in with claws, they get slept, they nearly die, and then they run away. So not great, but fortunately we don't take the full damage of the Golden Crux Ash of War, and we're able to back off a little bit, you know, live to fight another day. Unfortunately, as we roll down here, we get hit by another falling ceiling. So I would love to know how much damage we took throughout the course of this invasion. It was a lot, but you know, sometimes it just goes that way. So here we do have a little bit of time with the blue, and obviously, like, we're doing a lot of cuts between this because there's lots of times where we're just, you know, in standoffs. Maybe I'll be shooting a Great Bow arrow, or maybe I'm just, you know, waiting them out, trying to get a little HP back from bestial vitality, stuff like that. So you know, you have to play it kind of cautiously here. You can't just run in and press forward the whole time, which is unfortunate because that's the way I'd prefer to play, but yeah, there's just too much damage that comes your way in those instances. So here we're playing a little bit of cat and mouse with this blue. We're really trying to get them to aggress without needing to go into the room where the phantom is just gonna, you know, send more projectiles our way. So FP does not seem to be a concern for any of these players, but such is the case in Elden Ring most of the time. This player is running very low poise, which is not really a concern for us because we're really going for the two-handed moveset on this weapon, but it is going to be nice that they are taking more damage. Their damage negation from their armor is quite low, and here, just with a spray of fan daggers, we finally get that blue down. So this must have been like 5 or 6 minutes into the invasion, and that felt like a massive victory, especially to get 2 flasks back. That was huge. Again, we're in this kind of standoffish point with the two players as they send lots and lots of projectiles our way. So here we try to aggress the host, but wouldn't you know it, here comes the phantom with Moonveil for a nice little jump scare. And I tried to cut out some of this stuff because I've spent a lot of time on that falling platform just trying to get in chip damage, and I could understand if that made viewers motion sickness or something. So we're going to skip ahead to this point where finally the host and the phantom did separate, and because this player is light rolling, I actually switched over to the backhand blade, which did get a poise damage increase, so also got buffed questionably, and I think the damage was lowered a little bit, but there you can see it doesn't super matter. We still are in a position where we're doing lots of damage to that phantom, and due to the backhand blade's forward momentum, we're able to finish them off. Now, another blue does come into the world. Fortunately, we're able to find them while they're AFK, which is just classic, and eventually, finally, we can catch up to the host after all these minutes, all this time invested, and they fogwall us. So yeah, I think there's a Linkin Park song about how in the end it doesn't even matter, and that's really how I felt in that moment. Like, I kind of knew it was coming as I went down those stairs, but man, like, just to be robbed of the satisfaction is unfortunate. But hey, they have pretty much no resources, and they're going into that boss fog wall alone, so that's the best we can do in some cases. Next up, we're going to have a 2v1, and this one was definitely a challenge. We're going to see a Light Greatsword also from the host, and then we have the Falx from the Phantom here. And we're going to need to look out for the Ash of War on the Falx. You can get a nice jumping punish on that first part of the Ash of War, not the follow-up part of the Ash of War, but the part that comes out after the long run. So going for a jump can be a good way to just, shut that down a little bit. It's worth noting that we did swap over to a cold Milady, so there's a number of different ways you can run the Milady. I found that I like the Lightning Infusion the best, but obviously cold, bleed, just heavy, those are all good infusions depending on your build. The cold and the bleed, I would say, is probably going to be best on a dex build, but the heavy obviously is good for a strength one. But yeah, we spend a little bit more time chasing after this player with the Falx. We're trying not to get caught by the host's damage, and they're just throwing a lot in our direction. We decided to just run through their incantation, or I'm not sure if that was Flame of the Red Maidens. I feel like, yeah, it looks very similar, but either way, we are just pretty aggressive on this Phantom. We feel like we'd be able to get them if we just have a little bit of time alone, and we do end up with that time alone. We don't get parried because we go for a jumping attack, which was a good read, I think, and then we go for Sword Dance and begin the chase down on the host. So yeah, you can see the Frostbite is definitely useful, but I think because the poise damage is so much higher now, like, you're not really relying on them getting frostbitten and having that little, like, freezing proc stun them. So now you can just, break their poise all the time and do the damage you need, and maybe throw freezing pots at them to get them frostbitten if that's what you're looking for. But eventually we do follow it up with the Sword Dance, finish off that player, and we can move on to the next one. Next up, we have a 3v1, and this is going to be in the storehouse, which is one of my favorite places to invade. This player is going for some free-aimed Ash of Wars, or they're having just trouble locking on to the right player, which is not uncommon in a situation like this, but we do need to look out for both the Scatter Shot on the Claws of Night, as well as the Guts Greatsword, which I believe is bleed infused. So while our health does stay in a pretty good spot for most of this invasion, we're really concerned about our blood loss meter, so that's going to be the thing to look out for. Here we managed to aim punch this player as they go for their Ash of War and get them to very low HP, and we toss a Fan Dagger into the group of three, just kind of hoping, because really it doesn't make sense to to not do that if you have the option. In my opinion, there's just too much going on to let that player get away with 1 HP. So we need to look out for the Lightning Perfume as well, and the blood loss meter is continually just kind of going up between the Claws of Night and the Gugs. Two big concerns there. Here we end up getting hit with the Gugs. Yeah, it might just be the Claws of Night that are causing this blood loss buildup, but either way, we do need to focus on both players pretty significantly. And here, as this player goes for Scatter Shot, again, we're able to shut it down before they can get it off a second time, and that allows us to focus on the host here. We're going to heal our bleed one more time, definitely the way to go. Toss a Freezing Pot, and at this point it seems like the host was either trying to Alt F4 or just gave up entirely, but it doesn't matter, it's too little, too late, and we can move on to the next one. So here we actually have a 2v2, which is always fun to see. We're going to be trying not to get into the way of our co and just let them throw their giant madness pots if that's what they're looking to do. And then we're trying to shut down the uplifting aromatic coming out from the side of the host and the Phantom. We do have to worry about some healing incantations that come in from the side of the Phantom, so that's going to be a little bit of a concern. It hasn't come out yet, but they are running Faith builds, so healing, especially heal from afar, is always a bit of a concern in this patch. Really does a lot to just, nullify a lot of damage that you go for. So here we can see that damage we're just accumulating get nullified by healing from afar twice. Unfortunately, our Co was not able to hop in and shut that down in time, but we did get the finish on the host, and then the Phantom gives up. And before we are able to get our last bit of HP from them, they do move on. So next up we have a group of 2 just in this Poison Swamp. So we do love that. Poison is always fun, and Miyazaki's a fan of the Poison Swamp, so why shouldn't we be? That's the way I see it. We do need to look out for the Hyper Armor on this Colossal Sword, as we can't trade into it super effectively, as you'll note there, and there are some little bugs in the mix, which is kind of nice. We get a decent amount of damage on this player. We'll see pretty soon, actually, that they're out of flasks, which makes our life quite a bit easier. I feel like that is never the case when you spawn into a world. But we get a Freezing Pot off that kind of demonstrates the latency that we're dealing with. That Freezing proc comes in quite late. But we just finished that player off with our Ash of War and begin pressuring the host here, going for their Vike Spear. So try not to get too much madness buildup if we can avoid it, and here just a heavy attack followed up by Sword Dance does substantial damage, and then it's kind of tricky if you just delay your hit for players to get away from you in an instance like that. And that's going to bring us to the duel portion of the showcase. Our first opponent is going to be running a halberd with an offhand club. I don't believe this true combos. I think you need something as fast as the hand axe for that, but it is still a strong setup. You have access to some quick high damage hits with the offhand club, and then a lot of damage with the halberd. We're going to be running some heavy attacks with the Light Greatsword and just trying to find our opening, see if we can get a feel for the latency, and see if we can get some hits to connect. The nice thing about this build is once you start getting hits to connect, it can be very difficult for your opponent to get out of that, especially with Sword Dance. And here we can see the utility of Sword Dance, the Hyper Armor just shutting down the club and maintaining priority for us. So I really like landing those heavy attacks, following up with Sword Dance, and then we are able to get just a real quick hit and finish off our opponent. Next up, we will be seeing another player running a Light Greatsword, which is definitely cool to see. They go ahead and get their buff off. We're going to allow that to happen, but then maintain aggression afterwards. And then here we can see what happens when you roll in against Milady and try to take priority. I think your best bet is to really just back off and reset to neutral. Our next opponent is going to be running a Greatsword, so we're going to need to respect the Hyper Armor on it. We can't go too hard against it, and it's also going to anti-air us pretty well, which is a little bit tough for us since we are going to like to go for jumping attacks. And here we go for a couple heavy attacks followed up by Sword Dance. We don't get Sword Dance to connect, but we are in the lead for HP. Now we are going to back off a little bit, let them go for their thrusting attacks and try not to get too aggressive. And here we get a nice read on them, manage to anti-air them, and then trade into them with Sword Dance, and that's going to be enough to finish them off. Our next opponent, you can see based on their name, is a Bleed Enjoyer. So we need to look out for Reduvia, just try to reaction roll their swings. Here we do get clipped by it and take a little bit of the blood loss buildup, but it's not too much for us not to be able to just rush in a bit. And here we get a couple of quick hits in, and that does substantial damage, but we do need to respect their priority. Their ability to get a lot of bleed damage very quickly is going to be problematic. And here we can see the new and not improved Swift Slash, so the range on it is much more manageable. Just the aggression you can get with it is easier to deal with, and we're able to shut it down pretty easily. It's just not the monstrosity that it used to be. Our next opponent is going to be running Backhand Blades, which also did get adjusted in this patch. So I think they do a little bit less damage, but they have more poise damage. So I would say they're still probably a little bit too strong. We can see just a ton of bleed buildup. They're using Sword Dance, which is a little bit scary from a Hyper Armor perspective, but it is not as bad as I would say Blind Spot at this time. So we're able to get in a bit of damage. We're about even in health, and we need to just kind of continuously heal the blood loss buildup that we're getting. Fortunately, we're able to whiff punish them with a heavy attack, and now we do have the lead in HP. We go for a Ravioli Step, get a decent amount of damage, and then just trade for the last bit of HP that we need. Our next opponent will be running a buffed Great Katana. We definitely want to look out for their ability to anti-air us. I find that their R1s do a great job of knocking players out of the air, so we're trying to just reaction roll and then get in quick hits when we can. Fortunately, they, or I guess unfortunately, they have a backstab grab that allows us to go for a heavy attack, and we can begin at least chipping away at them. They've not really lost much HP in the process, and we're a bit down on health at this point, but here we're able to land a jumping attack, try to maintain priority. It also feels that there's a little bit more hyper armor associated with this weapon now, so I'm not sure exactly how the hyper armor changed for Great Katana, but I believe it doesn't get stunned quite as easily as it used to. And we do end up getting a backstab there. We go for wing stance, not sure if we can grab something from it. Sometimes it's a nice way to punish the running attack on a Great Katana, and here we actually trade for the finish. We give them a bow, and then we will be checking our HP. 3 HP left, so that was a close one. Our next opponent will be running power stance katanas, so it's good to see the Nagakibas getting used in this patch, but it's worth noting that the crouching attack no longer does under 133 poise damage, so that was the case before. If you were running full goat, you could definitely tank the crouching attack on the power stance Nagakibas, but now that is no longer the case, and they are pretty deadly. The one-handed moveset is not quite as strong as it used to be, but here we're able to just kind of shut things down with the Light Greatsword and move on with our day. If you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, as always, I would appreciate it. And yeah, that's going to be the end of the showcase. I hope you have a good one.